Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review of a Sultan Pasha fragrance. Now, I must say a couple things to begin this review because I feel like I cannot emphasize it enough. I've been wearing Attars lately because the great Sultan Pasha will be coming on my channel Sunday, December 10th at noon Central Standard Time. And so I just felt it was my honor and duty to sort of wear these Attars, which I honestly feel like a foreigner, like a stranger in a strange land, right? Some Iron Maiden, stranger in a strange land. That's me wearing these Attars. Sorry about that. Couldn't help myself. And you know, it is foreign to me to be wearing these Attars. However, I must admit something to you guys. I am a man of routine. And I didn't like the fact that with the Attars, you had to swipe it on, dab it on, rub it on once you put a little bit on. You with the spray, obviously, you spray. You can spray away. I could do 10 sprays and just let it sit there, right? And I'm a man of routine, so not spraying really got to me. But now that I've been wearing Attars lately, I must admit, I am enjoying the Attar routine now that I'm in it. I enjoy putting a little bit on, rubbing it on, smell. Oh, it's so beautiful. So today we're going to be talking about a fragrance called Ensar Rose. And so a couple things, I guess, I should really try and hammer home. I don't feel like there's any way to do a proper Attar review, right? I'm going to sit up here and say some words because that's what you do in a review, but I don't feel like anything I'm going to say is going to do this fragrance truly justice, right? It's almost like saying, describe a rose, right? Describe, if you're holding a rose in your hand, describe it to someone who cannot see it. Well, I mean, it's almost impossible to describe the beauty of a rose, right? Or just imagine trying to then describe the smell of that rose. This fragrance does a couple things that, even though I don't want to say it's not my style because it's such a beautiful natural style, but there is a softness and gentleness and a delicateness to this fragrance. And I think in the modern culture and the world we live in 2023, the end of 2023, right? So much of what comes out nowadays is all about strength and power and sillage and amber woods that shoot across the room. You can smell someone from the backyard across the shed when they're standing in the front yard, right? There is that sort of pull of modern fragrances where it's not just enough for the person next to you to smell you anymore. It's not just enough for the person behind the person next to you. The whole room has to smell you, right? And there's something about this modern culture where it seems more is more instead of less being more. And right, it's all about sort of this, nowadays in perfume, it's about almost this race to see who can create the absolute cheapest formula, right? The most synthetic formula that will sell for $500 a bottle, and everyone in the room will smell you and know, wow, that person is wearing Baccarat Rouge 540. They must have money, right? That's what it's all about nowadays. And this fragrance is 100% the opposite of that. 100% the opposite of that. It has a very rare, wild, distilled oud from Ensar called Oud Yunus, which was distilled in 2007. It's one of the rarest, oldest, wildest Hindi oud offerings Ensar ever made. It's like one of his all-time, famous distillations, okay? And it's in here. But this fragrance is about a couple things. And if you watched my video yesterday, I did a This Year in Perfume 2004 ranked video. I was wearing this. I've actually, just to tell you how much of a routine person I am, I never wear the same fragrance twice, okay, in a row, ever. Hardly ever, except for these reviews. Lately, I've been forcing myself to wear a fragrance a second time. I wanted to review this fragrance yesterday because I wore it twice in a row yesterday. Well, today it's my scent of the day again. This is the third time in a row. This is the third day in a row I'm wearing Ensar Rose by Sultan Pasha. I never do that, ever. But there's something about this fragrance that keeps drawing me back, right? There is a beauty to it, a natural beauty to it. Like actually looking at the inside of a rose and just thinking about what it looks like, right? How beautiful the detail is from the rose itself to the spot that it grows in the ground, to the smell, to the petals falling off when the rose gets old, to just so many things, right? Just looking at that rose. And I watched a video today and they were talking about how our brain is actually very similar to the structures of the universe, how the neurons in our brain and are similar to galaxies and all these. It was a very interesting video, actually, when you really think about it. And so this fragrance kind of just kept making me think. It kept pulling me back in. It kept, making the gears turn. And there's something beautiful about that. The problem is with this fragrance, in my opinion, is that this fragrance is going to be a letdown to someone who is used to smelling Bleu de Chanel, Dior Sauvage. I'm not just using those as an example, but I'm saying these modern fragrances that have these synthetics, or if you're used to a sandalwood note that you can smell from here, and you can just smell it radiating off your hand, this fragrance isn't for you. Because this fragrance is all about highlighting the beauty of the natural materials. That's what I've come to learn about Ensar Rose. It is one of the most natural fragrances I've ever smelled, period. Forget about an Attar versus a eau de toilette versus an eau de parfum or an extrait, right? Just in general, period. Any fragrance that I've ever put on my skin in my entire decade or 11 or 12 years now of really being into fragrances, I've never smelled a fragrance that is so natural. This fragrance is just natural in a bottle, literally. It's natural in a bottle. Oh, and so let me see if I can attempt to describe this to you. Again, I don't think it's fair to, how can you sit and catch an attar that literally changes on your skin for 20 hours, It's damn near impossible, but I will do my best. So to me, this opens up with a slightly lemony, very fresh smelling rose, okay? And the first time I smelled it, I actually thought it was Taif rose, but it's not. It is a rose Otto called Rose Alba Otto. There's two. There's Rose Alba Otto and there's Persian Rose Otto, okay? So from my understanding, and again, I'm not a professional, just a man that loves fragrances, Rose Alba Otto is a specific Rose Otto created by white rose petals, okay? And the delicacy of the rose in the opening is so brittle and beautiful, and yet there's something almost heartbreakingly beautiful about the opening of this. I mean, literally, it almost will bring a tear to your eye without being earthy or green or, synthetic smelling or punchy or, some rose scents have this jamminess to it, which is usually, I think, from the synthetic materials. This one just smells like someone just very carefully picked the petals off of one of the most beautiful crystal white roses you could ever imagine, like the most beautiful white rose you've ever seen in your life. Just pluck the petals off perfectly. And to me, there are a couple parts of it. So there's the rose, which obviously the rose in this is made up of multiple types of rose. And on top of it, there's a tuberose note, which we'll talk about later on. There's a tuberose absolute, but there's Persian Rose Otto, or as Sultan Pasha's website calls it, Persian Rose Otto, and then there's the Rose Alba Otto, and then there's Bulgarian Rose Absolute. So there's different types of roses in here. And the second part of the release to me that really stands out early on, it isn't the vanilla, because if you look at the top notes, there's Persian Rose Otto, Rose Alba Otto, and Tahitian Vanilla, right? That Tahitian Vanilla, which I can't sit up here and lie to you and say I know what the difference is between Tahitian Vanilla and Madagascar vanilla and I have no idea, to be honest with you. But I will tell you that the vanilla in this, you would expect it to be this big, strong thing. It's not. It's not at all. In fact, it comes on later, it feels like to me, and it just adds the tiniest little bit of, the slightest bit of sweetness. I would never think there was vanilla in this fragrance if I didn't read it as a note. Okay, let's put it that way. So what comes on second is not the vanilla. And it's not the oud, which you would expect. The fact, if you look on Parfumo, you'll see an Indian oud. And again, I said the oud in here is a very rare Hindi oud called Oud Yunus by Ensar Oud, which we will talk about here in a little bit. But what ends up coming next to my nose is probably one of the most beautiful Mysore sandalwood notes I've ever smelled, ever. And if you watched my video yesterday from 2004, the reason I was mentioning that is I actually put some of this. This is Santal Mindy from 1906. And this is a actual Mysore sandalwood, pure oil, that Russian Adam sent to me. And sometimes I'll just take a little bit and put a little dab on my wrist. And I did that yesterday because I wanted to compare. And it's so similar. The beauty of the Mysore sandalwood in this, and this is aged Mysore sandalwood. So I actually don't know how old this is. This is from 1906. That is a long time ago. I don't know how long the aged sandalwood is in this particular Attar. I have no idea how old this particular Mysore sandalwood note Sultan Pasha was playing with is, but I can tell you that it is so perfect. It's one of the most realistic Mysore sandalwood notes I've ever smelled. And I've smelled a lot of fragrances that try to use a Mysore sandalwood accord based on the real Mysore sandalwood that I've smelled. And some of them get close, some of them create a beautiful fragrance, but they don't get in the ballpark of really creating that true Mysore sandalwood. This one is spot on. It's floral, it's spongy. I mean, it is just smooth as butter. I mean, just so, like I said earlier, heartbreakingly beautiful. Almost like you get a little bit of the little flowers that grow off of the Mysore sandalwood tree. Just completely silky smooth sandalwood. And you know what ends up happening is the fragrance starts to feel like there's an incense note coming forward. But what I've determined after wearing, and again, I'm not an expert on this fragrance. I've worn it 3 days in a row, but that does not make me an expert. I feel like you could wear this fragrance for a year and not be an expert. Honestly, it is so unbelievably detailed, but the details are so minute, and you're smelling something so natural. You're not smelling these huge transitions like, you know, Rich Mitch describes the way Demachi used to make his fragrances as like painting with a big paintbrush, right? And Olivier Polge like painting with a fine paintbrush where you can see the details. This takes that to the nth degree. I mean, this is like saying all of the other perfumes that you've smelled feel like they're painting with a giant paintbrush, and this is just, this type of perfumery just feels like you're painting with this detailed, this unbelievable detail and the most unbelievable naturals that you could ever imagine smelling in a fragrance. Oh, it is just addictive. It's so beautiful and it's so addictive. But what I think ends up happening is this sandalwood note almost feels like it's being burned on like an oud. You know, one of those very low temperature grade burners that you see folks burn like Kinam oud on. It's supposed to be at a very low temperature, right? And it feels like you're taking real Mysore sandalwood dust and sprinkling it on that burner and just allowing it to burn this very wispy, silky sandalwood smoke, okay? And it's just so beautiful, so beautiful. And I have heard some people say that they think it's actually the tuberose that's giving it that incense feel. That tuberose can sometimes give it a little bit of this, tuberose is known as being camphoraceous in quality, right? And so the tuberose can sometimes come across as having an incense feel. I never would have thought that. I don't know if that's true or not. It's just something I thought I should mention. You will also, at this point in the fragrance, as it begins to get to the mid, that's where you're going to start to, if there even is a mid to this attar. I don't know how you even do a top, middle, and base of an attar like this, but the vanilla starts to add just a little bit of roundness. That's a good way to describe it. I don't think I would describe the vanilla as adding sweetness. I think I would add the Tahitian vanilla and honey, just add a little bit of roundness. It's almost like you can't even smell them, but they just add a little bit of roundness to the fragrance, right? Add maybe some 3D texture, if you will. And so the rose begins to change, because in the top, when you smell it, that white rose, which at first I was like, man, I'm not smelling white rose. I'm smelling like Taif rose, like lemony Taif rose. And the more that I've smelled it, the more now all I can see is this pristine, almost like immaculate white rose, right? And just imagine like this spotless white rose, just perfect, pristine, right? Like if you asked an AI computer to generate like the perfect example of a white rose, just perfection, that's the white rose that comes to mind. And it starts to turn slightly more powdery as the fragrance begins to dry. And it also, if attar is even dry, and it also slightly turns green, and you start to get little hints of this artichoke. So if you've ever heard me talk about some of these actual rose attos that Russian Adam sent to me, like for example, this is Iran rose, right? And go check out, Russian Adam and I did an interview together. It was Russian Adam interview part 2, where we went through each and every material he sent me, and I got his feedback on it. He was probably tired of that by the end, because I'd be like, "What about Iran rose?" And he'd be like, "I don't know. What do you think about it?" I'd be like, "Well, you're the perfumer. You tell me." But the funny part is whenever I first smelled these proper rose attos, I was like, "These don't smell like rose. They smell like, I don't know, like a put artichoke leaves in a blender or something." There is something very green about them. And the actual rose otto doesn't smell like rose, but it has this, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there definitely are those rosy bits. But what's crazy is whenever you are smelling rose in a composition, the perfumer is supposed to make it smell like rose, right? And so there's this, on one side, you want it to smell as natural as this, because this is like such a natural smell when you smell pure rose otto. And each rose has its own little tilt. Some are a little bit more fruity, some are a little bit more creamy, some are a little bit more powdery, some are a little bit more fresh, some are lemony, some are heavier smelling, some are jammy, this, that, or whatever, right? All these different takes on different types of roses. But all of these natural rose ottos have this almost green, natural artichoke blended feel to my nose. And you get a little bit of that in this as it continues to dry. There is a little bit of that starts to come to the forefront. Just a little bit of this sort of green, like you blend it in. You're not just picking those immaculate white petals anymore. Now you're blending in maybe some of the greenery, maybe some of the leaves, maybe some of the thorns that are thrown in there with the rose, right? And it's mixed in with this sort of and this is where I started to think more about the tuberose, because someone mentioned the tuberose with the incense, which I didn't pick up on that. And maybe I just don't understand how tuberose works in a composition because I'm not a perfumer. But I did pick up the tuberose once the fragrance began to turn sort of creamy and milky. And sometimes tuberose can give off a little bit of that milky type vibe. Like, what came to mind as the fragrance continues to dry, as the attar, I should say, I guess it's not a fragrance, as the attar continues to dry, which I love the little wax seal thing he does, by the way. I think that's badass. But as the attar continues to dry, it reminded me of, have you ever seen like a milkweed? Right? Have you ever seen like someone like cut into a milkweed, and the milkiness from the milkweed like runs down that hairy looking green stem of a milkweed, right? It just kind of, the milkiness just sort of runs down it, right? And just imagine this sort of untouched rose, this immaculate rose, as I said earlier, mixing with what smells like that creamy milkiness from the inside of a milkweed. Or if you've ever been a kid and you're out like playing in a field, and you like just kick one of those milkweeds and it breaks in a weird jagged fashion, but you can definitely see the creamy milkiness sort of fly off or something. Something creamy, but also portraying something that's very clean and pure and natural is kind of the way that I would describe it. And this would be, for me, as I continue to wear this scent, and as I said, I have to almost remove myself from this scent, because it's easy for me to say, well, this type of fragrance is not my thing, but it's such a beautiful fragrance that I almost have to like stand back and be a referee. Like I can't say that this isn't my thing and I wouldn't wear it, because it's so unbelievably beautiful. I absolutely will wear it just because of how amazing it smells. It's like I almost have to put my own feelings to the side for this one. You know what I mean? It's that kind of fragrance. There is this, I was thinking that this would be the absolute perfect wedding scent for a woman. because there is this unbelievable purity to this. There is this virgin purity to this fragrance. There really is. In the execution of that purity in Attar form is mind-boggling to me. It's something that I'm blown away by. And so speaking of weddings and brides and this idea of beautiful big days and the idea of like someone's day in the sun, and this fragrance got me thinking that it kept reminding me of like this luminosity of the sun. And I kept going back to it's almost like I mentioned the rose and I mentioned the sandalwood, but it's almost like you're smelling the sun that grew those fragrances. It's like you're smelling the picture of the sun that grew the rose on one side of the world and the same sun that grew the sandalwood on the other side of the world. And I know that makes zero sense, but there's something about Sultan Pasha's work that always makes me think of like the colors of the sky. I don't know why. I haven't figured it out yet, but it did it with Fagia as well. With Fagia, I said that it reminds me of like the sun at when it's setting, and you can see like the pink hues, the red hues, the blue hues of the sky still, but also maybe the darker hues as night starts falling. And this reminds me more of just like a full-on, just beautiful yellow sun, just giving life to these beautiful ingredients, the rose and the sandalwood. And I don't know what to say. I know that Sultan Pasha is trained as a chemist. I know that about him as a person. I know he's a trained chemist, which is almost something that I feel like is so important if you're a perfumer, right? It gives you an edge. And so I know that there are some synthetics in here. I'm not so naive as to say that this is 100% all natural, like Sultan Pasha is just squeezing real rose juice in the bottle, right? It doesn't work that way. I understand that perfectly. But the point I really want to get across, I think, is just that even though there probably are some synthetics keeping everything together, the way that they all work in such a natural smell is something I've rarely come across in perfumery. And so I think it's either partly luck or maybe partly his genius that the rare wild Hindi oud used as a base here is the exact type of oud that fits this profile for this fragrance perfectly. Because what ends up happening is there's nothing in this particular oud that overshadows any of those softer, gentler notes. Because remember, like I said at the beginning of the review, nowadays when you smell sandalwood in a composition, like you go down and buy your newest Dior fragrance or Guerlain or LVMH, or I'm not picking on those brands, but even go buy your Amouages or your Rojas or your Rochas or your MFKs, or pick your fragrance brand that you love, and there's a sandalwood note in the base. 99.99999% of times it's not real sandalwood. It is some sort of a sandalwood alternative that the oil houses have come up with, whether that's Givaudan, Maine, Robertet, Simrise, IFF, you name it, right? All of those oil houses have created some very convincing sandalwood-like materials, but the reality is many of those materials are much punchier. Think of Santal 33 by Le Labo. And I like Santal 33. I'm going to review it. I have a love-hate relationship with Santal 33 because I love it, because I like that sort of just, ballsy, challenging, scratchy, sharp sandalwood that's like, I'm here, I'm pickly, and it does smell, there's a pickle side to the sandalwood. And I'm here, and if you don't like it, screw you, get the hell out of my way. And it's a huge fragrance. And then on the other side, I hate it because of that ultra synthetic, creation. And so what's crazy is that the gentleness of this fragrance, of the notes in this fragrance that shine, to me, now I've heard some other people say they get much more of other notes, but for me, it's the rose and the Mysore sandalwood. Those are the stars of the show. You will get a little bit of Haitian vetiver. You will get a little bit of Haitian vetiver, but outside of that, the other star of this show that sits in the background, it's a lurker, is this very rare Oud Eunice distillation by Ensar Oud. And what's interesting is it may be the perfect fragrance for this style of oud. And if you've watched some of my other Ensar oud reviews, I actually reviewed an Ensar, a fragrance that Peter Carter made for his house. Centauri Perfumes is the name of his house. And the fragrance that I'm referencing is a fragrance called Shambo. And I actually reviewed it on the channel. Shambo, Shambo. And there are like 3 or 4 different types of Ensar's oud in that particular release. There's one from Thailand, one from Borneo, one from Cambodia, one from Papua. There's all these different types of very rare ouds, but they're all sort of very fruity, floral. You know, they don't smell like the type of ouds you would imagine. This is a Hindi oud. This is like a, well, I should be saying this. This is a Hindi oud. So this is supposed to have like this animalic, barnyard, challenging, fermented opening. It doesn't. It's completely missing. Some people say the top notes are missing from this oud distillation. But what ends up happening here is that all of that barnyard funk you would expect in a Hindi oud is gone. And so what happens is that it allows you to sort of focus on the beauty of the composition, because the oud is there, and it's almost like you can feel its presence in the composition. It's like you can feel the oud's presence before you smell it, if that makes sense. So while you're wearing this, for me, and it always happens this way with Ensar Rose. So when I wear Ensar Rose by Sultan Pasha, you feel the oud's presence first, almost like, you know what I thought of? I thought of how astronomers can tell that a planet is orbiting a particular star, because even if they can't see the planet because it's so far away, they can actually see the star wobble a little bit. The mass of the planet pulls the star like in one direction. That's how they can tell, hey, there's a planet and here's how big we think it is. And so it's almost like you can feel the gravitational pull of the oud on Ensar Rose when you smell it. But what you end up smelling once the oud really comes through is you sort of get this dried fruits, plum-like feel, almost like a fruit conserve. Like imagine a fruit conserve in an oud. And so what's crazy is the oud is very creamy and very suave and very gentle, and yet it's supposed to be, they say it's supposed to be powerful. I don't necessarily think it's a powerful oud, but it's almost like the details of the oud are so vast and so varied. Here's basically what Ensar says. Ensar says that shortly after distilling Oud Yunus in 2007, he fell in love with it. And he decided there was no more time to waste hunting down wild agarwood trees in Assam. This is a wild distillation, Oud Yunus, by the way, which for those of you who don't know, there's like plantation oud and there's wild oud. Wild oud is like, I just was walking in the jungle and I stumbled across this 200-year-old oud tree. No one's found it yet, right? And Ensar basically says those days are done as far as distillation of wild oud goes. 2007, he decided it was basically done. It says the soulful depth and mystic pull of Meghalaya oud had all the splendor of Assam oud to offer and more. Oud Yunus ranks as the oldest, wildest, and rarest Hindi offering to grace our collection. Yet, distilled in traditional Indian fashion, the way they would have done 100 years ago, the oil's aroma is almost the archetypal, is also the most archetypal and soul-stirring. I will give you the soul-stirrings part. I think actually soul-stirring is a good way to describe Ensar Rose, to me. Soul-stirring is a good way to describe it. And that's exactly what Yunus does. It musters Herculean strength only to remain gentle and soft, radiating sunshine and dried... Sunshine? I didn't even think about that. Radiating sunshine and dried plums on the surface of his unfathomable depth. So it says it boasts some milk chocolate creaminess. Definitely get the creaminess, but I don't get the milk chocolatiness. This is not a chocolatey oud. If you're expecting a chocolatey oud, you will be disappointed. If you're expecting a chocolatey oud, just go buy, like, I don't know, Oud Monarch or something like that. Or the one Rich Mitch has been obsessed with these last couple of weeks has been Melt My Heart by Strangelove. That's a good chocolatey oud as well. But, so don't think this is a chocolatey oud, but there is a creaminess to it. And sometimes when you smell it, you might think, maybe there's just a touch of barnyard, just the tiniest bit. almost like you're smelling the soil that the rose is growing in, right? Like someone put down some fertilizer for the white rose to grow in, and you're smelling the beautiful white rose, and every now and then just a hint of that fertilizer like sneaks through and hits you. That's the depth of this fragrance. And so for me, um, this is something that, again, it's not my, like, if I was going to have Sultan Pasha create an attar for me, it would not be this, okay? But then again, it's almost like you're watching like, for me, the way that it feels is, have you ever seen like two rivals compete in like a sport? And maybe they're like the best of the best. They go head to head. And you can watch them and it's almost like they're admiring the other person. Like, head shake of approval for the other person who is just performing so well, but they're kind of competing. That's almost the way that it's like I almost just like look at Ensar Rose with just this approval, this fatherly approval almost. Like, yes, very well done. It's not my thing. This type of fragrance is not something that I would think I would want to reach for 3 days in a row. But damn, I've loved it. I've loved every second of it. And that's something with Sultan Pasha's work. The depth of the attars, as I'm getting to know, it seems like some of these eau de parfums and eau de toilettes have a certain amount of depth, and it's like the attar depth is just like the ocean. Like you're going along and you think you're deep because you've hit the bottom, but you're really just at the point where there's like a cliff where, there's a drop off, and the ocean goes much, much deeper. That's what getting to know some of these attars has felt like for me. It's like entering an entirely different world of perfumery. It's absolutely insane. And it's crazy. There's so many things out there. Rich Mitch and I and Jonathan were talking about this today. It feels like as soon as you think you know everything in the perfume world, you don't know anything. I mean, there's so many more fragrances to discuss. It's never ending. Never ending. And it's a beautiful thing for somebody who has this as a hobby or addiction, if you would prefer. It's a beautiful thing to be able to discover something like this. So gorgeous. I don't know when this came out, to be honest with you. I've heard people say that it originally came out in 2012. I've heard people say 2014. I don't know when Ensar Rose came out. If you listen to Parfumo, it's 2014. But I heard some people who made some videos say 2012. So Ensar Rose is just amazing. I mean, I've enjoyed every second of it. Like I said, even though it's not my thing, I feel like I have to put my own taste to the side and just judge this as a referee. I have to be fair. I have to be neutral. I'm Switzerland in this. I'm straight down the middle. I'm Switzerland. And Ensar Rose has thoroughly impressed me. But I feel like you have to go in with the expectation that you are smelling what the actual natural ingredients smell like. If you've ever smelled real Mysore sandalwood, if you've ever smelled some of these rose attos, if you've ever smelled these type of very fresh, with the minimum amount of synthetics used, Ensar Rose is that exact fragrance. And it's gorgeous, beautiful, truly enjoyed every second of it. So I cannot wait for Sunday, December the 10th. Can't wait for Sultan Pasha to come on our channel and show us some love and chat with us. And it's just gonna be amazing. I hope as many of you can make it as possible. It's noon Central Standard Time on Sunday, December the 10th. So the Sultan, the maestro of attars, will be here in person, and we can ask him questions. So have your questions ready. I'll have some questions written out, but I'm expecting questions from the audience as well. So please come prepared. So I cannot wait to join you guys for that. And I think I'll be wearing, there's one more attar that I want to get to know better his work. This one's called Al Hareem, I believe. Al Hareem, yes. And this is saffron butter absolute. That's two things, saffron and butter absolute, with Persian rose otto, Turkish rose absolute, Mysore sandalwood, tobacco, Assam oud, Hyraceum, ambergris, Bengali oud, and musk. So I'm very excited. I've worn this one to bed once, and it is a banger. Spicy animalic fragrance, and gonna probably wear this tomorrow, which is Saturday, and then Sunday for the live stream with Sultan Pasha, and then maybe Monday I'll even review this one since I'm on a roll reviewing these attars. So anyways, thank you very much to everybody who has watched, commented, liked. By the way, I have to just mention one other thing. I know we're already 35 minutes in, but we just hit 6,000 subscribers today. December, what is this, the 9th? Is today the 9th? Yes, it's the 8th, excuse me. It's Friday, December 8th. So we just hit 6,000 subscribers today, which almost makes me just want to fall out of my chair laughing that 6,000 people have subscribed to listen to me ramble about perfume. But it truly is an honor, and I do take this very seriously. And I love doing this. I love the interaction with you guys. So to every single one of you who have clicked the subscribe button, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you. It does mean a lot. I don't judge myself against other channels because I don't really care. I'm never gonna have as many subscribers as Oda Erica or Jen Sense or any. I don't care about any of that. But just with the amount of subscribers that I have and the way I get to run my channel, I'm loving every single second of it. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed, who got us to this point. I hope you're really taking something from this, because just as much as I hope you're taking something from me doing these videos, I also take something from you guys, and I learned so much, and so much generosity from the community, and learning about all of these. No way would I have ever ventured into Attars if not for the community. And so there's so many things to learn and get to know, and so it's just an honor and a blessing, and I just want to say thank you for getting us to 6,000. Here's to the next 6,000. So cheers, guys. Catch you next time. Bye bye.